I decided to do this little video for just 2 or 3 people. I'm not going to post it for the public because there have been several people ask me what I've been doing with some of my older models. Well, a lot I've given away, a few I've sold, but I got interested in modeling again, and I did it by deciding just to get in brushless, which I knew nothing about. I liked ferrite motors. I could take them apart and tune them and time them, get all the power I wanted out of them. I can get them give me all the power built into it in 20 flights in competition, rebuild it. I was using cobalt, a 5-turn, but I didn't know anything about brushless, and I probably still don't. But I'm taking older models now and converting them to brushless, and I thought I'd go through and explain pretty much what's involved. It's kind of fun. If you like to tinker, this is a good way to enjoy your tinkering. So this was the next one I'm going to do. This is the old model I call Caliban Express. It was made for various applications in competition. That's why there is such a large area for batteries, particularly in events they used to call all up, last down, anything goes. Well, we could load these airplanes up with as many batteries as we think we could fly around with. I'll have plenty of room to put the motor where I think it ought to go, but as usual I'm concerned about weight. LiPo batteries don't weigh what the old NiCads did. The motors don't weigh what we used to work with. But this is a good airplane. It's got about an 86-inch wing and it flies good. It's got an old NA 6409 airfoil on it, and I'm familiar with that airfoil. This is not the most efficient tail I could have put on this thing, but I like pedestals. I like the way they look. They get the horizontal tail out of the grass. It gives it better support, and also it gave me a place to put the little servos, so I put the servos in the back. The elevator servo was done the same way, just put it in the pedestal. So let's see what you do to get a brushless motor where there used to be other sorts of motors. In doing something like this, it always starts with a piece of paper and somebody else's work. Considering the airplane weighed 2.7 pounds, I thought I wanted to do about 350 watts. Think of that as work. That should be a straight up climb, we'll say, at some speed. I don't know. It's not for competition, but I like my airplanes to go up. So if I had 350 watts being dissipated and I had 11.1 volts, that tells me it's going to be pulling 31 amps at that time. Well, that tells me, yeah, I need a 31 amp or something like that ESC. But that's just at that time in voltage with that level of work. Now, what prop? Well, here's the instructions that comes with the motor. I had a couple of motors that I knew would work. They're see, this one is a 3536 910 kV. All that really means is 35 millimeters long, 36 millimeters in diameter, at 910 kV. That means for each volt going in, I'm going to get 910 RPM on the prop. That's interesting to know. Looking at the specs of these two motors, I see that of the two, one has 1,000 RPM per volt, the other has 910. Doesn't make me any difference. I probably wouldn't see that difference anyhow. However, over here, one is can handle 432 watts, the other 370 watts. Well, I wanted 300 watt, 50 watts. That'd be making that motor work full out all the time. So I opted for the little bigger motor. It says they need a 50 amp ESC. I can believe that. Now the interesting thing is about the props. With the motor motors. I can use 11.5s, 10.6s, 10.6s, 12.5 according to this information, depending on the batteries I'm going to use. I'm going to use 3-cell 2.2 amp batteries. This one has a discharge rate of 40 C, so 40 times the capacity. 2.2 amps is its workload, so 4 times 2.2 is 88. I can pull 88 amps from this without destroying the battery based on its discharge rate. It will go up to 70 times its capacity on discharge. That's a pretty healthy load, but I won't be going anywhere near that. But that's the battery. I had a problem in picking out the prop. I decided that I wanted a 10.6, but my problem was it was on a short hub, and that short hub interfered with the spinner I wanted to use. You can see the difference there in the hub. I like Sonictronic products, so by going to the longer hub, then I'd use the spinner I want. But if I go to the longer hub and put the 10.6s on here, I really end up with a 10 3/8 with a 6.5 pitch. For 3 cells, what they said was 2 cells 11.5, 4 cells 10.6. I'm using 3 cells, so it should be a little bigger than 11.5, but smaller than 11.5. And so I'm going to 10 3/8 by 6.5. So that's pretty good. I think that's right. And also I could use my larger hub. So here's the motor I'm going to use. And what I'm going to do now is figure out how to put this in this. I have different ESCs. This is 85 amp I got for another application. This is 40 amp. I think since this is going to be so nice, I'm going to go ahead and get a 50 amp ESC. I need one from time to time anyhow, so I'll go ahead and order that now. With all this room up here, it should be easy enough to mount this motor. What I'm going to do is I'm going to assume that with this long nose, there's the CG, with this long nose, with this motor and this battery, as far forward as I can get it, I may not have to add much lead, particularly when I put a 50 amp ESC up here. So I don't want to chew on this any, so what I'm going to do is, easy way out, I'm going to make a mark across here where I think that firewall ought to be. I'll worry about cooling later. Since I got plenty of weight capacity, I think I'm going to make this motor mount out of something like 1/2 inch solid wood. That way I'll get a good glue bond to the sides, and I'll be able to get good screw mounts. So now I guess I ought to mark it off, figure out how big my firewall needs to be, and go saw some wood. Okay, I've got the little firewall, if you can call it that, mounted to the motor. That's where it needs to go. So if that slides in there, it's glued. The clearance here looks to be about right. So now I'll remove this again, and I'm going to assume and figure out some way to reach in from the front with a Phillips to put those screws in there. We'll see. Next thing, of course, is then to take a Dremel tool and start working down here to get this to seat down to where this center line here is on the center line of the model. That will be next. Okay, you can rinse and spit. Thank you. Okay, after I've been hogging some of this material out, I've got my little firewall, big firewall, and I'm just trying to get it to go in where I want it to go. That's parallel to this nose, which I know is right. This is parallel. Now I need to get it to where this will be flush with that, and it's not there yet. I'm going to have to, I think, round off the corners. No, not yet. At some point I'm probably going to have to round off these corners, but not yet. Yeah, okay. More Dremel work. Lean back in the chair, please. For various reasons, this is the way the spinner's going to line up. Well, there's a lot of reasons why. The firewall can be mounted now, and I run into a real problem. I might as well tell you about the way it's arranged. I can pull these, reach in through here, and remove the aluminum mounting plate. Or I can reach in through the back and undo the 4 screws that hold the motor to such a plate. Then after I do the 4 screws, I can pull the motor straight out. Then I can reach in from the front with a screwdriver and remove this. I had big plans. I knew what this is supposed to have looked like, and it ended up looking like this. They say, measure twice and cut once. I measured probably 30 to 40 times and cut 50 to 60 times, and that doesn't include the drilling. The problem is the fact this motor is not symmetrical. I'll show you better with this motor. How can this motor not be symmetrical? Hell, it's round. Well, it's not symmetrical. This is symmetrical, mounted any way you want to mount it. But look back here. Here's the hose that mount to the aluminum piece. There is no reason for this. Technically, it'd been better to have these hoses out here in line with this. You'd get a better flat face for mounting, but the screws do not go through this thickness, so they could have been anywhere. I cannot understand why they went to asymmetry there. I guess it's just because they knew that Ken Cashion in Picayune, Mississippi was going to assume they were. They're not. So what will happen now is I will coat these surfaces here with CYA to make them good and hard. I've got a lot of balsa removed all through here. I'm going to soak that with thin CYA, and then I'm going to epoxy the firewall in. I got it marked. I know where it's going to go. I did manage to get a little bit of down, not enough to really do a lot of good, but like I say, I got it marked inside. That's where it's going to be. This extra clearance, well, the extra clearance is to make it easier for the prop to fold. I had to go to a larger hub, and that's going to make it's easier for the prop to fold. So that's the way it's going to be. Stupid machines. This is starting to get kind of crowded in here. You can imagine what it would have been like when I had my 12-foot sailplanes. Where we are now, the motor's installed, firewalls epoxied in. I had to work pretty hard to get this spinner on here. I decided I wanted to use this spinner rather than the other one because I wanted to get this hub a little further out and still have just a little bit of air gap in here. And moving it a little further out lets the prop fold back like it's supposed to. I had a hard time doing this part here because as I tightened the nut, the collet would just rotate on the motor shaft, and there was nothing to get hold of back here to hold on to. There's not enough space. So I remembered when I had that problem with these kind of props and spinners on the Airtronic gearboxes, Master Air Screw gearboxes. So I cut a little piece of medium grit emery cloth about that big, put a hole in it, slid it on, so between the back of this plastic spinner and the front of the swedge end of the collet, I've got a good grip there. So now I can hold on to this and tighten the nut and not have the collet rotate on the shaft. So it's on there real good. I got a little bit of down in it, which I was hoping I would get some. It doesn't bind at the bottom, which kind of surprised me. Now, with the battery I'm going to use is 2.2 amp, 11 volt, and I'll get it as far forward as I can. If I get hold of where it used to balance, right behind the main spar, that's pretty close to where it flew. So that's going to work okay. And you think, well, gee, that was lucky. I put a lighter motor in with more power. I got a smaller prop because I'm going to be turning it up faster with this motor. Motors turn about 1,000 RPM per volt, no load. And I'm going to use this battery. But this battery is it says 50C continuous load, so 2.2 amp to be 22 amps. I cannot discharge this battery too fast with this motor and this prop. That's the whole point. You think, well, this is pretty good. I got a lighter, more powerful motor. I've got a smaller, lighter battery than used to fly in it, and it balances. Well, it balances because I've got a 6.5 ounce slug of lead up front. That works out well that it's that shape. I'm going to cut this little notch out here and here, put another bulkhead in. I can use something that thick if I wanted to, but whatever I use, I'm going to have holes, 4 holes in it, so I can go in this direction with a Phillips screwdriver to take the screws out of the back of the motor, and this aluminum plate here can stay in. There's no point trying to get it out. So next order, bulkhead, and I'm going to cut some of this away so the battery can go as far forward as I can. I hope to put the ESC right here. Now that's going to leave me from here to maybe a foot back with nothing in this fuselage. But that's okay. This airplane was designed to carry all the batteries I could get in it. And I had over a foot of fuselage length that just cram batteries in for all up, last down events. It's a good wing. I know the wing. It's an NACA 6409 that's been made into a flat bottom. Very, very good wing. I'll have to do a video about this wing someday. It's rather unique. It's old-fashioned, and that's why it works so good. So, bulkhead, hose, cut this out, and then I might put a couple of bulkheads at a 45-degree angle to strengthen this and back in where the payload section is supposed to be. I did get this big block here in that's going to hold my weight in. There's the firewall. And in making holes in these bigger pieces, you just go ahead and saw straight into it and use the saw to do it rather than hogging it out with drills. You're going to glue it in anyhow. So I put a little piece of lead tape on my lead, and keep it from falling out on me. I'll just take a piece of balsa 2 and shove it in there, and that way they'll be under some compression and it won't fall out on my foot, or worse, fall out and me not know it and launch it without 6.5 ounces of lead in the nose. I did go ahead and remove a little bit of wood down here. It was just awful close, so I just removed a little bit there. Besides, I wanted to get that off so I can get a good monocoat seal on that area. I'm about ready to put new monocoat on it. Now, this area here, that's where the battery goes. And I was going to make a piece of 1/8 inch ply to go from here to here, against here and here, with just an adequate opening to pull this out. And then I thought, no, if I do that, I will not be able to pull this weight out, reach in through here with a Phillips screwdriver and get the screws out of the motor to pull the motor out. So I'll leave this open for the time being, and I may have to actually make a tool. I may get me the right Phillips, cut the shaft off, and then file a hex, grind a hex at the end, so I just put a little socket wrench on it. And anyhow, when I want the motor out, it'll come out. This area down here, I am going to butt a piece of 1/8 inch ply from there to here, and then I'll have this opened in here, but I want to stiffen this up a little bit. Matter of fact, I could have it open here to put this in and out, and then right along in here have a web going across with another bulkhead. That's a good idea. I think that's what I'll do. That's what I'll do right now. Oh, here is the emery paper, sandpaper I put between the back of the plate, and that means from then when I tighten the nut up, this is not going to rotate and not tighten up the collet. I've done nothing else at that end that you haven't already seen. Here's the 1/8 inch ply piece I put in just because this was just too far to suit me without any internal structures keeping these sides parallel. It was okay when I loaded it up with batteries, but I'm not doing that now. I've got one battery. It's going to go in here, and ESC is going to go on their side. And I think I'm going to not use the BEC. I think I'm going to use various NiCad flat packs for the radio gear to kind of trim the balance. Weight's not a problem. The airplane needs to have CG the right place and least amount of weight to get that done. I put the bulkhead in here, which is also 1/8 inch ply, piece of little 1/8 inch square spruce at the bottom to keep that secure at the bottom. It's good. It's glued good on both sides, and it's glued good at the top. Because this is flat now, I added an 1/8 inch square spruce piece because wings have a little bit of dihedral in the center of them, and then that necessitated just putting a little piece of trailing edge stock here to butt the wings going this way. Then the cockpit, the canopy cover will fit the right way here. But right now I have a mess of pieces of monocoat, and I need to start finishing this thing up, doing monocoat trimming, and I need some tighten up some monocoat on the wings, then put the prop on it, which I know is going to fit, and be ready to test this sucker out. The prop spinner zone, they look nice. I've got the monocoat added where I didn't have before. I got my LES decals on both sides of the nose, and I put a LES decal on the fuselage too. I had them. I don't know yet. Depends on how it balances. I'm quite likely to use an NiCad pack, something like this one, just for the radio control, and it's just pretty heavy, and it would be a nice thing to put up here to help balance it without adding lead. I need to put the speed controller. There's the battery pack, and canopy still fits right. Now, it's one thing to put a lot of openings for air going in, but unless you put an opening for the air going out, you're not doing much good. So the area where the exit for the air needs to be a little more than what's going in, and it needs to be in a low pressure area. And with the air flowing around this nose, this is certainly a low pressure area to draw the air right out. So I guess I'm waiting for the speed controller to get here and go fly. I didn't explain about the name of this airplane, and I guess I really should. If my airplanes are really ugly, as this one is, they get a name like Caliban. Caliban was the detested, demented dwarf son of Sycorax the Witch in The Tempest. He had no redeeming features at all. So I had one that's called the Caliban Shuttle that carried lots of weight for weightlifting competition. And I had this old fuselage I put together to go with an even worse wing. And so since this is faster, I just called it the Caliban Express. But that explains why I have airplanes called Caliban. And I had a sailboat named Sycorax. Sycorax is not in The Tempest. She's mentioned. Caliban is a major role. But yeah, that's why my ugly airplanes are called Caliban. Well, we're out here on the flying field to see the first powered flight of this airplane. I know it flies good when the motor's off. Let's see where the CG is going to be. I know I'm close. Okay, that's 2 bands on each side. You should always have 1 band more than you need, because a band can break at any time. And this thing may put a little load on the wings. It's got a whole lot of speed. So now we can put a battery in it. Okay, 2.2 amp, 7.4, don't want that one. 2.2 amp, 11, that's the one we want. Canopy doesn't weigh much, but it weighs some. Okay, right behind the front spar. That's flyable. That is flyable. Let's see if it'll fly. Going that direction. that was kind of interesting flying this morning. I can't say that I'm overwhelmed. It was okay. My concern is that the angle of ascent was right, but I really kind of expected a little faster rate of ascent. But if you can remember, we started out with other people's figures, other people's list, and I said I wanted 350 watts. That'd be 31 amps. And sure, I could have figured out ways to check that, but I knew the paperwork would get us close enough that I could see how it's going to fly and fine-tune from there. I wanted a 50 amp speed controller because the motor was good for 50 amps. Not that I was going to work it that hard, but I thought I'd put this 40 amp in here and run it a little bit and see if it's getting warm, and then if it'd be okay for a couple of flight tests, and it was. One thing that was changed since last time we saw it, because of the lead on the being so short on the speed controller, I had moved the receiver up here from back here. It was okay. The servo leads were long enough, and the receiver moving forward didn't make a whole lot of difference. It doesn't really weigh anything. But the really interesting thing is, after I got through flying and came in, I found my Hobby King power analyzer. Now we can find out what it was really doing in the air this morning. I don't know, let's see. Okay, yes, we want wattage. Okay, so here we go. You can see the watts at lower left, current kind of in the middle. Left, right, up, down. This should be throttle. That was 316.27. 316.27. That's interesting. What this means is that I didn't get the 350 watts I wanted. I got 315, 27 amps, not 31 amps like I thought. Therefore, it's under-propped. I need to put a little bigger prop on it to make it work a little harder. I don't know what I'm going to put on it. 11.5 maybe. I've got a 13.7. I'll work it up till I've got the motor working as hard as I want it to work. But this morning was a good test flight. It flies and it went up okay even. So you can kind of imagine how it will go up with another 40 amps going into it. Another 10% power. I think that finishes us up on this airplane. I think this pretty much completes this little project. I'm under-propped. I'll put a little different prop on it. I'd like to get the work up to, if not 350 watts, up to 340 maybe. But I won't bother you folks about this anymore. It's going to go up the same angle it did this morning. It'll just go up faster. So I enjoyed it. I hope you did too.